Welcome to the Deep Dive, your essential shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today we're plunging into, well, a fascinating, maybe sometimes challenging stack of sources. They give a real-time snapshot of where things stand globally and nationally. We'll touch on everything, high-level diplomacy down to the nitty-gritty of state politics, and see how these things that seem separate are actually deeply connected.
Absolutely. And our mission, like always, is to pull out the most critical insights, maybe some surprising facts from these reports. We want to help you quickly grasp the underlying dynamics, what it all means. It's not just what's happening, but, why it matters to you and to the bigger picture.
Okay, let's unpack this then. First stop is the Gaza Strip. The latest reports are painting an incredibly dire picture, a real humanitarian catastrophe unfolding.
That's right. The IPC alert that came out late July the 29th, it states pretty unequivocally that the worst-case scenario of famine is currently playing out. And that's not like a future prediction. It means widespread starvation, severe malnutrition, disease picking up speed, and tragically, a rise in hunger-related deaths. It's happening now. The report flags that famine thresholds, they've already been hit for food consumption in most of Gaza. And for acute malnutrition specifically in Gaza City, that's a critical point. It's systemic breakdown.
It's just harrowing. The speed and scale. I mean, the IPC analysis back in May 12th, it already projected the entire population. What is it, 2.1 million people?
Yep, 2.1 million squeezed into just 365 square kilometers.
Right, all facing high levels of acute food insecurity by September.
Yeah.
And 500,000 of those heading for catastrophe, phase 5. That's the absolute worst level. But what's even more disturbing is, since that May report, it's only gotten worse.
Exactly. Intensified bombardments, expanded ground operations. That's led to nearly 6,700 people killed and 325,000 displaced just since mid-May.
And the safe space.
Yeah.
It's vanishing. 88% of the territory now under evacuation orders or militarized zones. Less than 12% left as supposedly safe.
It's pushing people to the absolute brink. Over 762,500 displacements just since March 18th. It's creating an unlivable situation.
And here's something that really stood out, tragically. Over 1,000 people killed between late May and late July, killed while just trying to get food.
Yeah.
Many near militarized distribution sites.
Yeah.
Like that July 20th attack on a humanitarian convoy.
Mm-hmm.
73 killed, 150 injured.
It's horrific.
When you see those numbers, especially deaths while trying to get food, what's the single biggest systemic failure these reports point to?
Oh, that's a great question. It really drills down to the huge challenge of humanitarian access. Even with some easing of the blockade back on May 19th, only a, quote, trickle of aid has actually gotten in. Let me give you some numbers to show the gap. Gaza needs over 60,000 metric tons of staple food every month.
60,000.
Oh. But they only got about 20,000 in May, less than 38,000 in June. And crucially, there was that stretch, almost 2 months between early March and mid-May, where basically no aid got in.
Wow.
And even the aid that does arrive, only 14%, just 14%, actually reached distribution points in June.
So claims like the one from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation?
Yeah.
Distributing 89 million meals?
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot, but...
Right, but the sources point out most of that food isn't ready to eat. It needs water, it needs fuel for cooking, things people just don't have access to. Plus, these distribution sites, they're mostly in high-risk militarized zones, so getting there is dangerous, it's unequal. The most vulnerable often can't reach them.
Which explains the terrible food consumption trends.
Exactly. 1 in 3 people going without food for days. The number of households facing extreme hunger, it doubled between May and July. Over 80% reporting poor food consumption now.
Just desperate.
Totally desperate. Nearly 9 out of 10 households taking huge safety risks for food or even scavenging in garbage.
And it's not just the hunger, is it? The health crisis sounds just as bad.
Oh, absolutely. Acute malnutrition is surging. Over 20,000 children admitted for treatment between April and mid-July. 3,000 of them severely malnourished.
So tragic.
And we know of at least 16 hunger-related deaths of children under 5 just since July 17th. Plus, water, sanitation, hygiene, wash conditions, they're awful because of fuel shortages.
Right.
9 out of 10 households facing water insecurity. Diarrheal diseases make up almost 40% of reported illnesses. It's a public health catastrophe on top of the food crisis.
So with all this, this horror, basically,
Mm-hmm.
how's the rest of the world reacting? Is it shifting anything?
Well, what's really fascinating, and the Carnegie Endowment experts point this out, is how these images, the reality of starvation, are driving a pretty serious shift in international attitudes. And diplomacy.
How so?
Countries like Canada, France, the UK, they've signaled they might recognize a Palestinian state, maybe as early as September. Even Germany and Italy, usually more cautious, are finding it hard to stay quiet.
And many already do recognize it, right?
Yeah, that's right. 147 out of 193 UN members already do. But this potential move by key Western nations is significant, and the Arab world is reacting too. Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they're airdropping aid. Egypt's resumed land border deliveries.
Is there any bigger diplomatic push?
Yes, there's a notable Saudi-French two-state initiative. It's got backing from 22 Arab League states in the EU. It condemns the October 7th attacks, calls for Hamas to disarm, proposes PA governance with international support, basically renewing that old land for peace idea.
Interesting. And what about public opinion, say, in the U.S.?
That's shifting too. A Pew poll showed negative views of Israel topping 50% among Americans. And get this, half of Republicans aged 18 to 49 now view Israel negatively. That's a big change.
Yeah, especially within the Republican Party.
Definitely. And there are reports the U.S. administration is frustrated with Netanyahu's actions, getting pressure from allies to push harder.
Okay, so this global crisis is really causing ripples.
Yeah.
Internationally, diplomatically, even in public opinion here. It's fascinating, then, to pivot and see how domestic politics are playing out in a key state like Texas.
Indeed. Let's dive into Texas. It's been front and center with a major redistricting showdown recently.
Right, the Democrats leaving the state.
Exactly. Over 50 Texas House Democrats literally fled the state to deny a quorum.
Deny quorum for us quickly.
Sure. It just means enough members leave so that the House doesn't have the minimum number legally needed to hold a vote. So they effectively blocked a vote on this GOP redistricting bill, one that had Trump's backing.
And Governor Abbott wasn't happy.
Not at all. Threats of removal, arrest, even felony charges. The House passed a symbolic measure to track them down, but the warrants were only good in Texas.
Has this happened before?
Oh, yeah. Quorum breaking is a legal tactic. It has history in Texas, happened in 2021 and way back in 2003, too. It's high-stakes political maneuvering.
So beyond the political drama, what do Texans themselves actually care about? There was that hobby school survey, right? January 2025.
Yep, polled 1,200 Texans. It gives a pretty clear picture, especially about that big $24 billion state budget surplus.
What are the priorities there?
Top two, property tax relief, 50% want that, and teacher pay raises, 40%. But also significant support for expanding Medicaid, that's 34%, and funding public school infrastructure at 31%. So a mix of concerns.
Okay, and what about immigration and the border? That's always huge in Texas.
Huge. And the survey shows what some are calling a new consensus. 3/4 agree the state shouldn't cut border security funding, and a massive 87% support targeted deportations of undocumented immigrants with criminal records.
Okay, that sounds maybe expected, but wasn't there a more striking number?
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. 60% support mass deportation of a majority of undocumented immigrants.
60%, wow.
Yeah, that view, once considered pretty extreme, seems to be hitting the mainstream in Texas now. It signals a real hardening of attitudes.
That could definitely influence the national debate.
No doubt. And alongside that, you've got 67% wanting to expand the border wall significantly, 73% wanting to limit asylum claims.
But is this all just hard-lined?
Not entirely. There's nuance. Nearly 2/3, 64%, still think there should be a pathway to legal status for undocumented immigrants if they meet requirements. And 73% support an exception for dreamers. So it's complex. Stronger borders, yes, but maybe still a path for some.
What about social issues? Any surprises there?
Quite a few, actually. Legalizing destination resort casinos, 73% support it.
Really? In Texas?
Yep. And marijuana, even bigger numbers. Medical use, 79% support. Decriminalizing personal use, 69%. Even recreational use gets 62% support. That definitely pushes back against the purely conservative image.
Okay. Abortion.
Views are mixed overall. 49% want easier access. 38% want to keep to current law, which is legal only if the woman's life is at risk. But there's strong majority support for legal abortion in specific tragic cases. Lethal fetal anomaly, 84%. Rape or incest, 83%. Risk to physical health, 82%.
And guns. Always a big topic.
Huge support for some controls. Background checks for gun shows, 91%. And private sales, 89%. Banning guns for those with restraining orders, 90%. Letting judges take guns from dangerous individuals, red flag laws, essentially 88% support.
What about assault weapons?
Even there, 70% support a ban on the sale of AR-15-style assault rifles. So while it's Texas, public opinion on some of these issues might be more aligned with the national mood than you'd think.
Fascinating stuff. So connecting these policy debates.
Yeah.
What about energy? That's always central to Texas.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Texas's energy policy is, well, quietly undergoing a pretty major transformation. Has huge implications for the whole country's grid, really.
How so? After Winter Storm Uri, wasn't the focus all on blaming renewables?
It often was, yeah. State leaders definitely leaned towards favoring natural gas then. But things are shifting. Texas is facing absolutely soaring electricity demand,
How much?
projected to nearly double by 2030, and they could face supply shortfalls as soon as summer 2026. So now Texas is really adopting an all-of-the-above approach out of necessity.
Meaning more renewables.
A lot more. Texas boosted its energy supply by 35% in just 4 years. And get this, 92% of that new supply. Solar, wind, and battery storage.
92%.
Yep. Texas added more battery storage last year than any other state. If you take out California, Texas now has more battery capacity than the rest of the U.S. combined.
Wow. So the oil and gas state is becoming a renewables leader.
Quietly, yeah. It's kind of amazing. And it's paying off. Renewables helped avoid emergency alerts during the 2024 summer heat, 6th hottest on record, and they saved Texas consumers an estimated $11 billion over the last 2 years.
$11 billion. That's significant.
Huge. Now, there's still legislative debate, right? Some bills try to restrict renewables, like requiring 50% of new generation to be dispatchable stuff you can turn on and off fast, like gas, not intermittent like solar or wind usually are.
But the overall trend is clear.
The trend seems clear. There's a growing recognition they need everything to meet that demand. And don't forget the local impact. These renewable projects bring millions in tax revenue to local communities, real money for schools, roads, things like that.
Okay, so from state politics and energy shifts, let's zoom out again. National politics. It feels early, but are we getting any hints about 2028 yet?
We are, actually. It's just the very first whispers, but yeah. There's an Emerson College poll from North Carolina done end of July 2025. It gives us some early signals.
Okay, lay it on us. Republicans first.
All right. On the Republican side, Vice President J.D. Vance looks dominant, at least in this early North Carolina poll. He's got 53% support among likely GOP primary voters there.
53.
Yeah.
That's commanding. Compared to who?
Compared to Ron DeSantis, way down at 7%, Marco Rubio at 5%. Now, 15% are still undecided, so things can change, obviously. But this fits with a national Emerson poll from May, where Vance also led, though with 46% nationally. He seems to be consolidating support early.
Interesting. Okay, what about the Democrats?
It's much more fragmented. In North Carolina, Pete Buttigieg has a narrow lead at 17%. Kamala Harris is next at 12%. Gavin Newsom at 10%.
And a lot undecided.
A lot. 24%, almost a quarter, are undecided on the Democratic side in NCC. And what's interesting is, while Buttigieg leads there, a national Emerson poll from June actually had Kamala Harris leading nationally with 30%, though Buttigieg and Newsom were gaining.
So the picture is different nationally versus in North Carolina, at least for now.
Exactly. Shows how wide open the Democratic field seems to be and how state dynamics can vary.
Beyond the horse race numbers, what else did the poll show?
Voter mood.
Yeah, it touched on that. 40% of North Carolinians said their family finances are worse off than a year ago.
Yeah.
A kind of economic anxiety is definitely going to shape priorities moving forward.
And what are the experts saying about these early numbers?
Well, Robert Shapiro, he's a political scientist at Columbia, suggests the early dim polling is mostly just name recognition, not necessarily deep policy appeal yet.
Makes sense. He also notes that Republicans like DeSantis and Rubio might be carrying some baggage from past races or losses. Vance, on the other hand, benefits from being VP and having that strong alignment with Trump's magic ace.
And what about Harris? You mentioned her leading nationally in June, but maybe slipping?
Right. There's analysis, like in Political Tides, suggesting her national Dem support dropped from around 35% in March down to just over 21% more recently. Rivals like Buttigieg seem to be picking up some steam.
Why the drop, potentially?
The perception among some is that she's maybe too much of a status quo defender, especially on things like Israel policy, and her loyalty to the current administration might alienate younger voters or those looking for more significant change. It raises questions about how broad her appeal will be in a contested primary.
So lots of uncertainty on the Democratic side.
Definitely. Which brings us to the long road ahead, right? Most serious candidates probably won't even announce until after the 2026 midterms.
So Vance looks like the presumptive GOP frontrunner for now.
Seems that way. But the Democratic field is, well, fragmented, fluid, could go many different ways.
It really raises the question, how will these super early signals change once candidates actually declare start debating policy specifics.
Exactly. The landscape could look totally different in a year or two, especially as these big global and national stories we've talked about continue to unfold and shape the narrative.
Wow, okay. What a journey today.
Yeah.
We went from the devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza and these big shifts in international relations,
To the really dynamic, sometimes contentious policy fights down in Texas.
and then finished with these very first hints of the 2028 presidential race. It really shows how interconnected everything is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Each piece gives context to the others, paints a much fuller picture.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought for you to chew on as you process all this. In a world where, state political tactics in Texas, a global humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and super early presidential polling are all happening at the same time, what's the common thread? What connects these seemingly separate stories about power, about people, and about resources? And how might these things happening right now shape our future, both here at home and around the world? Something to think about.